Hi, I'm Prism God, and this is Prism God TV. No, that wasn't right. Hi, this is Raphael. No, that's not it. Hi, this is Prism God, and this is Prism God TV. So with that being said, let's get this show started. So before you do that, I want you to hit that bell notification and click that thing on YouTube so you get all my notifications and we can talk about cards. And with that being said, I know before we talk about cards, we need to talk about the NFL, baby, and it's back. So with that being said, I want to say thank you to the NBA. We appreciate what you guys done and have showed us how to work during a pandemic and a bubble. And now we're going to see what the NFL is going to bring on a week-to-week basis while putting their bodies and their souls on the line. And we're going to watch the Bears win a Super Bowl this year, hopefully, in this pandemic. And then you guys will say that it was just because of the pandemic. No, I'm just kidding. It was because of the pandemic. But let's get this show on the road. The show today we're going to talk about is the hobby becoming more like the stock market? So let's think about this. If anybody's familiar with the stock market, and you know how volatile the stock market is, you could buy a company and lose money the same day. Very similar in cards if you think about it, right? So if you think about your favorite player, he gets injured. The injury he has is maybe a severe injury, a life-threatening injury, anything, right? So if you think about that, you spend $5,000 on a card, or $10,000 on a card, or $1,000,000 on a card, and you're trying to figure out what the card is worth, and you want to see how it's going to work out if they have an injury. My suggestion is don't buy a card that you're so scared to purchase. I would honestly try to focus on people who you feel like are sound investments. So, in my opinion, I think the stock market and the card market are very similar. One may be a little bit more volatile than the other, and some might find it very easy to understand what's going on in the sports cards market versus the card market when you're dealing with companies. But I say that they're still very similar because if you think about compare people like Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, then you think about companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, Tesla. If you think about the brands between the two, they're very similar. If you think about what LeBron has brought to the table, Jordan has brought to the table, and Wilt Chamberlain, other major players, Kobe Bryant, what they've brought to the table, if you think about their value, it probably will never go down. The demand is so high on some of those players, you'll probably never see some of these cards. It's so many cards that are out there, and so many rare things that are out there for certain people. It might take you forever to even see a card. I find myself in awe some of the times I've seen cards. Then I'll say to myself like I've never even seen it or even heard of it. And it's very possible. It's very impossible to sit here and say you'll know everything about the card world because I'm forever learning about everything, and I'm gonna learn with you guys. We're gonna learn with each other, and when I found out new information, I'm gonna tell you. So with that being said, the stock market is, like I said, companies like Apple, Google, these guys will flourish because at the end of the day, if they don't have the technology, they have enough amount of power to buy the technology or bring those people in as partners. So with that being said, so I ask people people always ask me like, well, how do I figure out what a card is worth? And I always tell people the only way you're going to figure out what a card is worth is if you go on eBay, you go to filter, and you look at completed listing and you change it to recent to show you the most recent comp. And if you don't know what a comp is a comparison between your card and maybe a card that is sold that's very similar. So that way you can kind of determine the value. So once you figure out and determine a value that's fair, now before you determine that value, I always like to go back and tell like a lot of my friends, I always talk about this imaginary price that we want for a card. There's a realistic price that is probably worth, and there's a price that we actually get paid. So if you want $1,000,000, but it's worth $100,000 and you end up getting $60,000, it is what it is. So as long as you're happy with whatever that decision is on that value, be happy. It's fine. So in that regards, the stock market is very similar to the card market in terms of the validity of what's going on. Like in terms of if somebody gets hurt or gets injured determines what's going on in terms of their value versus if a CEO of a company is moved to show you a direction maybe where that company is going. It's very similar in how it functions. It's just all about how you think and how you process things. So with that being said, there's all these different factors that come into play for the card market, like the Gary Vee effect, the eBay, the comps. Then there's people who are pushing up the value of cards on eBay, and then the next card is sells for half. Then you're like, well, what is the value? So it makes it really hard to figure out your value on your cards. But and it also, and there's always ways to manipulate the hobby in terms. I'm sorry, manipulate the hobby, but manipulate the stock market as well. I'm not good on that side. I'm not the person to ask about that. But I'm sure there's tons of people that are out there to do that. So with that being said, going back to the statement of if the hobby's more like the stock market, I say it is. I mean, we have people like Gary Vee who are in the hobby. We have Steve Aoki who's in the hobby, who are continually influencing new investors and new collectors to join the hobby, which a lot of times they don't necessarily know value or understand value. So I say to you guys, just check completed listings and go to eBay and you'll know what the value is. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's a good place to start. And then you have to be okay with whatever the value is, okay? So with that being said, stock market is very similar. And go Bears. And if you're not following Prism God, and if you have any other suggestions for a show or a topic that you would like me to talk about, feel free to contact me. We out. Prism God TV.